You're listening to Two Girls, One Crossword.
Well, we did it again. We went to a mall again.
We're obsessed with indoor shopping malls now. And I have to say, it was nice. Like,
it was a good time, actually.
While we were walking in there, I was like, whoa, imagine if they had like a USPS here.
Yes.
And a grocery store.
Yes.
And you also got to go to Old Navy or whatever.
Exactly.
What did we go for? Oh,
Uniqlo. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was a different mall than the previous mall we went to.
This one was much bigger. And it was busy. I mean, people were there.
It was a Sunday afternoon. It was busy. Although we were shocked. The mall on a Sunday afternoon opens at noon. Are you kidding me? What's going on here? What about the old people? What are they doing on a Sunday? Maybe church, I guess. But
we were ready to be there at like 9 a.m. I feel like the mall is open. Like you can walk.
I think you're right.
But you just can't go to the stores. But it's fine. The stores can be open later. But like there was, that little indoor place where the kids were. The food court was lacking. I feel like it wasn't as big of a food court as it needed to be. But it's like, yeah, there could be a dentist in there. Come on, people. Think of what we could do together.
It was a lot of fun. It was exciting because the mall Grace and I had previously gone to is like, it reminded me of the mall I went to as a kid, like the smaller, like, you've got your Old Navy and you got your JCPenney's and whatever, like kind of like a smaller mall. This mall that we went to this previous weekend was like the big mall. Like they had like, there's like a Michael Kors store there. There was like there's going to be a Primark. There's a Nordstrom, like a bigger, more ritzy mall. They had a freaking vending machine for freaking, Grace, what's it called?
What?
The sugar on the cone.
Like a snow cone?
No, cotton candy.
No, cotton candy. Yeah, it was the cotton candy vending machine.
And it like makes shapes for you. Like this was like, these are the malls that I think are
everything.
Yeah, the malls had everything. That is the type of mall I think is really doing well. They have stores in them that, like a Uniqlo is a pretty rare store to have, right? A Primark is insane. They had a Peppa Pig play area. Mm-hmm. Peppa Pig's World.
Yeah.
I mean, not that we went there, but we could go.
Yeah, it did look inviting. They had a tiny train that drove around.
Mm-hmm. The food court was lacking. There was a Stan's Donuts, though.
Right, but you know how I feel. I don't like gourmet donuts. I said it on this podcast before, and I'll say it again. Nothing beats a classic chocolate glazed donut. Just have a red velvet cake if that's what you want.
I totally agree. The only thing that I would order from a Stan's Donut is like an old fashioned. Their old fashioned is fine.
Right. You can also get that at Dunkin' Donuts.
You can also get that at Dunkin' Donuts. And sometimes when I'm like craving a donut, I'm craving like a Dunkin' Donuts or a Wawa donut. I'm not craving Stan's.
No, like a bacon donut.
In fact, I never crave a donut in the way that like someone who is like, I'm going to go to do like a donut crawl or like, that's not me.
Right.
Not me.
Remember when cupcakes were like the big thing and there were cupcake shops everywhere?
Oh, yeah.
And then, it was frozen yogurt, cupcakes, donut. I wonder what's next. Well, maybe Slurpees.
I think boba's big right now.
Right.
But
no way to know.
It's not like we live on this earth.
Right. If we do know, then I'm sure we'll talk about it right here on the podcast that you're listening to. Two Girls, One Crossword. I'm Grace Topinka.
I'm Chelsea Rowan. This is your favorite weekly Podword Crosscast. We're back yet again. Another mall story under our belts because why not? Malls are fun. We're mall girls now.
I'm basically a mall rat.
Like we
live in Chicago and we're going to just have like an hour to a mall.
Sometimes you got to drive an hour to a mall. And I've always said that.
Mm-hmm. Sometimes you got it. You can't take the America out of the gal.
You cannot. But aside from malls, which was a topic we covered here on the podcast, if you're interested, let us know. We can send you the episode. It was one of those where Grace and I actually talked about the same topic, which is a very rare occurrence. Mm-hmm. It's a great episode. I feel like that's one of our favorite episodes. We learned a lot about what malls were intended to be. Anyway, yeah, we talk about really cool things on this podcast, and then we go out and experience those cool things. Well, that's the goal. Or,
right.
You know.
I signed up to take a Rorschach test. Just
Speaking
kidding.
of Rorschach tests.
That was my Pollapalooza for the week. I asked on Twitter, have you ever taken a Rorschach test? And options were yes for a job, because that's something that, people used to do back in the day. Yes, as part of therapy, or no. And 100% of people said no.
Boring.
Only 9 people voted on this one, but still.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Okay, so I guess not that common. I was wondering, because, we have some older demographic followers on Twitter, and it was like, who was it? Was it Maya Angelou that said that she had to take a Rorschach test before a job that she had gotten in San Francisco or something? So,
right.
I mean, it used to be a thing that sometimes would, like, if you had a test or if you had a job where you were in charge of other people's safety,
right,
maybe they would have made you take one.
Right. And I think, too, maybe it's just like our perception of how common Rorschach tests are, because you see them in like entertainment type things, like movies and TV shows, that maybe I was just under the assumption that, no, they weren't common, but I didn't think that they were like rare either, Granted,
we only have a very small sample size of people who follow us on Twitter, but...
True.
Yeah.
If any of our listeners have, if you don't follow us on Twitter, if you don't participate in the Pollapalooza, and you have taken a Rorschach test,
or you know someone who has,
tell us about it, please. We beg of thee. Any scrap of information you might have.
We'll take it. We need it to sustain us.
Please.
It's the only way we can keep this podcast going.
I don't know anybody that's taken one, except there's The Watchmen. I feel like there's a Rorschach test in that graphic novel / movie. But that's about it. That's the only thing that comes to mind when I think of Rorschach test. Or maybe it's because the guy's named Rorschach? Fuck, I don't even know anymore. Anyway.
No way to know.
Don't hold me to it.
I don't know anyone either. Or at least that no one's shared with me. I mean, maybe people don't,
Maybe they don't want you to know.
Yeah.
Which
maybe
is fine.
They failed the test. That's not really possible, but.
Right.
Shall we get into our heights and shites?
Let's talk about the hits and the shits of the week. You want to start us off?
Sure. I did the Wednesday, June 14th New Yorker by Eric Agard.
Nice.
Friend of the podcast. Okay. 20 across, in quotes. Getting back to my anecdote, ... So anyway.
It's a good one.
41 across. Message that might begin, quote, just want to close the loop, ... Email,
clearly.
like the corporate speak.
Yep.
42 across. Command that activates a copier, ? Repeat after me.
I had that one too. Amazing.
46 across. Screwed for short. SOL. 5 down. Shoe style or a Spider-Man character. Mary Jane.
Oh, I don't know if I didn't remember that one. It's a good one.
That was it from that one.
Okay, I had from that one 9 down. Country fan ? And the answer was Patriot, which is pretty funny. Nice. And then 11 down. Speaking of malls, toy company whose website promises possum stuff, and the answer is Build-A-Bear. I don't know if the mall we went to had a Build-A-Bear, but we should check, because Build-A-Bear's doing a Hello Kitty collab. So you can get Hello Kitty cinnamon roll or Kuromi.
Oh no, Kuromi.
Kuromi, like the evil quote unquote bunny.
I'm not sure what she is.
She has like the black.
Yeah, I know what she is. I just don't know what animal she is.
Yeah,
but,
what is she?
She could be a bunny.
What are you?
Or a cat, but I feel like her ears are pointy. Anyway, she could be a bunny. Could very well be a bunny. She is wearing a hat, so possible to tell. Oh my gosh, that's so cute.
I know.
Okay.
Everything looks really cute. And I was on there, and it's like $50 a bear by the time you get through the end of it.
I know. I took my niece to Build-A-Bear, and it was like $80 for everything, because then she got an outfit too.
Of course.
Or maybe it was less. I don't know. But it's like, now I have to take my nephew because I took my niece. He's around that age, so
yeah, you're gonna have
him,
to.
But...
You're gonna have to. Are you seeing them soon? You should take them, and you should get a Hello Kitty one.
I am. I'm seeing them in July, so maybe. I'm not buying myself, and it's like all these plushes are so cute, but I have no place to put them.
You have plenty. So, look at that wall. That wall's empty behind you.
I can put my
Hello Kitty wall right
collection.
There.
Maybe you're right.
She says perfect amount of wall space for shelving behind her.
Well, sometimes the character skins or whatever are more expensive than the regular ones. So if he starts looking up the Hello Kitty ones, I'm going to be like, no, you don't even know Sanrio.
You don't
like,
know who
look
that
in
is.
this direction.
You're not even a true fan. Okay.
Right? I'm not paying an extra like $20 for you to get a character you don't even know.
I really want one though.
Yeah.
Anybody out there want to send me one? XOXO Gossip
We
Girl.
have any contacts at Build-A-Bear?
Yeah. Hook us up, please. That's all I had from the Eric puzzle. I'm going to take us back a little bit to the Friday, June 9th New Yorker by Paolo Pasco. The theme was called This Is Us. And essentially, the beginnings of a bunch of answers are related to artists that sing songs that have titles We Are Something. Here's the revealer. Question asked by someone in a relationship. This is 66 across, and answered by the artist in parentheses with the beginnings of 1729 and 49 across. What are we? Is the answer. Okay, so that's the question asked by someone in a relationship and is answered by the artist in parentheses for 1729 and 49 across. So, for instance, 49 across, the clue is information age invention by Tim Berners-Lee, and the answer is the World Wide Web, which is just a great answer and clue. But the beginning of that is the world, and in parentheses of that clue is USA for Africa. So We Are the World is the song by USA for Africa, right? Okay.
Right.
Then we've got 29 across, meet up while everyone's home for the holidays, perhaps. And the answer was family gathering, and in parentheses was sister sledge. So We Are Family. And then this one, I feel like I should know this one because I think it's a more contemporary artist, but you let me know. High School Romance Say, and the answer is Young Love, and the artist in parentheses was Fun. I don't know if I know this artist. Is that this? Okay. We are, yeah. I do know.
Sorry, everyone. That note, can't hit it on a good day, and it's early in the morning.
Yes, so that was a fun theme. I also liked from that puzzle 60 across, blank she blows. And this is in quotes, and the answer is thar.
I say that all the time.
Amazing. This clue is hilarious to me. 11 down, possible point of entry for a cat burglar. Open window. And then 49 down, House of Leaves, question mark. Tea bag.
Nice.
Yeah, it's a good one. That's what I got from that puzzle. What else you got?
Well, I did the Tuesday, June 13th New Yorker by Cameron Austin Collins. 10 across, you can see right through it. Contact lens. Which I'm wearing today. 27 across. Platform that usually doesn't take a politician very far, question mark. Parade float.
Nice.
1 down, 2001 roll for Eddie Murphy. Donkey,
classic.
47 down. Ooh, this is for you. Umami source for short. MSG, of course. And then 9 down, signature pairings, question mark. And the answer is initials.
Oh, I was like,
clever.
It's like date. Like, what is it? Nice.
That's all I had from that one.
Okay, I'll do the Friday, June 9th New York Times by Robin Weintraub. I learned something from this puzzle, 17 across. Animals that all share the same, quote, birthday, January 1st.
I don't know.
This is weird to me. Race horses was the answer. So I was like, what in the GDH are they talking about?
I feel like I did talk about this in my Triple Crown episode.
Yes. So I was like, what does this mean? When I looked it up, I was reminded of your episode. I can't remember what website I pulled this from, but it might have been like howto.com or something. There's at least one unusual fact about thoroughbred horses. Every thoroughbred horse in the Northern Hemisphere has the same birthday. No matter what month a thoroughbred is born, its birthday falls on January 1st. The universal birthday is August 1st in the Southern Hemisphere.
A Leo?
Yeah, right? Leos versus Capricorns. So do with that information what
crazy.
You will. I know, it's wild.
Because Leo's like the fire. Well, I don't know, but are they the fieriest of the fire, and Capricorn is the earthiest of the earth?
Yeah. Yes. Very much so. Another one from this puzzle. 25 across. Game you can't stand to win? Question mark. Musical chairs.
Nice.
And then, right, it's pretty good. And then I really like this one. 12 down. Glum drops. Tears.
Oh.
I just like that it was glum drops. I was like, that is such a fun clue.
It's like, wipe away your glum drops.
Do you have anything else?
Yes. I did the Monday, June 12th, New Yorker by Anna Schechtman. This is my last puzzle.
Okay.
Learn something new, 15 across. Language from which the word bong derives, and it's Thai. Bong is like a Thai word for a bong, essentially like a cylindrical pipe.
Oh, interesting.
46 across. Razor of spirits? Question mark. The answer was seance. And I almost did that as my topic, but I was like, I feel like it overlapped too much with my with the Ouija board topic. Although I could have done it, but I was like,
I know, yeah.
Okay, 8 down. It may cause trout pout if used in excess. Lip filler.
Oh, that's a good one.
I didn't know this. 33 down. Perry, who's the godfather to Lilibet, Prince Harry and Meghan Markle's daughter. Tyler. I didn't realize Tyler Perry. I feel like he helped them when they moved to Canada or whatever, but I'm like,
I think you're right.
Piece of trivia.
I think they lived in his house in LA for a while.
Right.
And then they moved to Canada, yeah.
I assume they knew him before. I don't know. Who knows?
Because of Meghan, yeah, right. For sure.
49 down. Wasp part? Question mark. And the answer is Anglo.
White Anglo-Saxon Protestant. The waspiest place in America is the Northeast.
Sure.
Is that all you have?
That's all I have. Sorry.
Okay, I'm going to end on the Tuesday, June 14th New York Times by Juliana Tringali Golden and Wendy L. Brandeis. The theme was fun. 34 across is the revealer. Quote, got everything before we leave? With a checklist seen in the circled letters. And the answer is ready to go. So, these are the themed clues and answers. 17 across. One hailed on a city street, and the answer is taxi driver. But the two circled letters in taxi driver are ID. So you have to have your ID before you leave the house. 23 across. Output from an eruption. And the answer was volcanic ash. The four circled letters was CASH. Cash. You have to have your ID. You got to have your cash. 49 across. Cocktail garnished with an orange slice and a maraschino cherry whiskey sour. And the word key is circled in between in the center of that word. So you have to leave the house with your keys. And then 57 across. Hold to a moral code. And the answer was keep honest. And phone was circled in the middle of that answer. So you got to leave the house with your phone as well. So that was a fun theme. I also liked one across. Airdrops? Question mark. And the answer was missed. And that's all I have.
Excellent. Well,
excellent puzzle.
We
excellent
got airdrops and glum drops.
Yeah. Wow. What a day.
What a day. Shall we flip the coin to see you guys?
We should flip the coin. I'm flipping the coin now. It's heads. Back on my BS. My topic comes from the Friday, June 9th, New York Times. Was it New York Times? It is by Robin Weintraub. 13 down. Shoe brand with an iconic checkerboard design.
Vans.
Vans shows up in puzzles a lot, so I felt like it was finally time to give him a deep dive.
Do a deep dive. I've been wanting to buy some platform Vans for a while now.
I know. I love a good pair of platform Vans too, but anyway, we're talking about Vans. Have you ever owned Vans before?
Yes, I had the checkered, but I had it in, I was like trying to be different. So I had it in navy blue and white instead of black and white. And I had them for years. I mean, by the time I stopped wearing them, they were like so like torn up and falling apart. But yes, I loved them. I
did too. I've had a couple pair, but the one that really sticks out to me were my white slip-ons, which is a bold choice for sure, but I was a shoe drawer. So me and my friends did like fabric paint on them, and like I wore them to concerts, and it was just like they're grimy and dirty and drawn on and like very much like ratty, but I loved them. I loved them. But yeah, we're going to talk about Vans. So first of all, we have to flash back in time to the 1960s, and we're going to hang out with brothers Paul and James Van Doren. That's their name. The story goes, after dropping out of school in their teens, his teens, Paul Van Doren found work at a shoe manufacturer named Randy's. Randy's, also known as the Randolph Rubber Company, also known as Randolph Manufacturing Company, also known as Randy Manufacturing, was named for its location in Randolph, Massachusetts. But sometimes in the late 40s, early 50s, the company started referring itself to just Randy's. It was just Randy's. Mm-hmm. And you could see that through all of their branding. I'd actually be curious, because Randy's was around for a while, if any of our listeners ever wore any Randy brand shoes. They were a pretty popular, affordable shoe brand that you could buy in shoe stores across the United States throughout the 60s and 70s. So let me know. Anyway, Randy's made all sorts of shoes: basketball, tennis, bowling, yachting, gym, and other sports, casual shoes, and snow boots. I read on a blog that the Randy's were the third largest sneaker brand at the time. What I thought was interesting is I was looking at pictures of their old shoes, and they looked like ripoffs or like copycats of other famous shoes at the time. For instance, their famous basketball shoe was it basically looked identical to a Chuck Taylor. Okay. Mm-hmm. And then fun fact, Converse, which makes the Chuck Taylors, was also founded in Massachusetts in the early 1900s. So I just thought, was rubber a big industry in Massachusetts? If you're from Massachusetts, let me know how much rubber Massachusetts makes. Okay. Anyway, so Randy's is best remembered for being the first company to come out with a skateboard shoe, like the first shoe ever advertised as skateboarding, for skateboarding. Okay. These were called the Randy 720s, and they were made with Randy Preen rubber. The shoe was introduced in 1965. The shoe was advertised with tougher rubber on the toe and the heel, making the shoes ideal for skateboarding. The shoes were created to feel like you would be skating barefoot with very thin rubber, and were very good for turning and doing spins, and the shoes cost $14.95 at the time. So you might be wondering, wait, it was designed specifically to feel like you were skating barefoot? What's that about? So I went on a small deep dive, about skateboarding shoes in general. So I'm just going to give you we're going to step aside and get a little bit of historical context about why this might have been the case. Why do people want to feel like they were skating barefoot? Okay. The 1950s was the dawn of skateboarding, with the first commercially produced skateboards hitting the market in this time. The first skateboards were commonly sold at grocery stores, and one of the first commercially sold skateboards was known as the roller derby, which is a cute, tiny little skinny red skateboard, like something that you might give to a kid now, but that was like the main board back in the 50s. Mm-hmm. So during the 50s, skateboarding was commonly known as sidewalk surfing. So skateboarders would be seen, quote, surfing down sidewalks in bare feet. Like it was basically like the land version of surfing. So they would do it without shoes on, which I was like, that is wild. And also, I cannot imagine the skateboard rolling over your toes. Yeah. Anyway, so in 1962, Val Surf became the first ever surf shop to sell skateboards, making it the world's first skate shop. Also in the 60s, the original Skateboarder magazine hit the scene, and it was the world's first ever skateboarding magazine. And the Skateboarder magazine featured many skateboarders, commonly seen in either bare feet or very thin shoes that provided a similar barefoot feeling while protecting your feet from getting beat up by the ground. I thought that was super interesting. So back to Randy's. Their first ever skate shoe was designed with this barefoot feeling in mind. The Randy 720 was also the official sneaker of the National Skateboarding Championship Incorporated, and was worn by some of the competitors in the 1965 International Skateboard Championships in Anaheim, California. The Van Doren brothers are working here at this time. Okay, they're working at Randy's. Paul had a pretty successful career at Randy's, earning the post of executive vice president by his mid-30s. Eventually, he was relocated from Massachusetts to California to save a failing Randy's factory. Shortly after, however, Paul decided he wanted to basically hone his skills as shoemaker and start his own brand. So he and his brother left Randy's, and they founded the Van Doren Rubber Company, which opened its doors in March of 1966. I love that all of these companies were like the Van Doren Rubber Company, the Randolph Rubber Company, whatever. So unlike their previous employer, the brothers hoped to circumvent wholesale and cut out the retailers entirely. Instead, they would sell their footwear directly to the public in order to increase their profits drastically. They had a manufacturing plant, which included a 400 square foot retail space featuring a sign that read House of Vans to sell their sneakers. On the company's first day of business in 1966, 12 customers showed up to choose from 3 styles of sneakers. When they first launched, the men's model sold for $449 and the women's sold for $229. Also interesting, at the time, the brothers only produced display models. So when a purchase was made, the sneakers were manufactured the same day and available to pick up that evening.
Warm and fresh right from the oven.
Right from the oven, baby. These were like fresh out the oven. So you had 3 styles that you could pick up from when you showed up to their store. You'd pick which style, what color, what fabric you wanted. And then they'd be like, okay, come back in 12 hours and you can pick up your shoes.
That's amazing.
All for $449 or $229.
That's a great price because what? Randy's was selling for $15?
$15.
Yeah.
This was a steal. Okay. So they offered shoes from a super small inventory, and these shoes that they were offering were simple boat deck canvas shoes with vulcanized soles, all handmade with high quality materials and hardware. So to vulcanize rubber, it's you treat rubber or similar plastic materials chemically in order to give it a useful properties such as elasticity and strength. So that was like one of the big important elements of these new shoes is that they were using vulcanized rubber. Mm-hmm. Fine. The most popular style was the style number 44, which is a deck shoe with a heavyweight drill upper and the all-important waffle sole that you see on the bottom of the classic Van shoes. Mm-hmm. And this style 44 is now known today as the Authentic. You can still buy the style on the Vans website. So the Van Doren goal was to make high-quality footwear at an easily accessible price point. Conveniently, the rubber waffle sole was a major player in the brand's early success. So it was designed to add a bunch of traction and grip to an otherwise very basic shoe, right? Mm-hmm. The waffle sole instantly became the company's calling card. What I think is interesting, kind of like how I mentioned with Randy's. Randy's shoes were they copies of other more famous shoes. Mm-hmm. So like their basketball shoe was like a copy of the Chuck Taylor. Their skateboard shoe, the Randy 720, looks like a Keds shoe. It's like mm-hmm. just tweaked a little bit. What I think is funny is that the Vans kind of ripped off Randy's style to make Vans.
Right.
It's basically like a distant cousin of a Ked, which I think mm-hmm. is pretty funny. Like it all started with Keds. Anyway, so the Van Doren deck shoes eventually caught the attention of local skateboarders. The waffle sole was perfect for gripping to a skateboard, while the narrow last provided greater stability on the narrow boards of the late 60s and early 70s. There's going to be a lot of shoe terms in here, and I tried to define some of the ones that I could, but there's just too much. So a last is that the mold that the shoe is created around. So, if you put your shoe on a hold, do you know what I'm trying to say? It's like mm-hmm. that. It's that plastic mold that's the shape of the foot, and then you mold the shoe around it. So Vans had a very narrow last, a very narrow mold, which was popular for skateboarders at the time.
Sorry if you had wide feet.
Yeah, you're SOL. I think Vans does make wide versions now, though, so I think mm-hmm. you're okay. Anyway, so quickly skateboarders across Southern California could be seen wearing the Van Doren shoes. According to legend, over the next year, the company opened a new store practically every week, with Paul scouting locations on Monday and signing a lease on Tuesday, remodeling on Wednesday, adding shoe racks on Thursday, and displays on Friday. They hired a store manager on Saturday and trained staff on Sunday. Despite his rapid-fire strategy, Paul's business model was moderately successful at best, and for the first 10 years, the company barely stayed afloat.
Oh my gosh.
That's crazy. So after receiving complaints from customers that the diamond tread on the sneakers cracked along the outer sole near the ball of the foot, the company introduced the patented waffle sole for improved durability. So the waffle sole is kind of like what made them famous, but it was originally a diamond sole.
Mm-hmm.
Customers complained and they changed it, and then the rest is history. What I think is really interesting about these early days of Vans, however, is how easily accessible the owners of the company were. So you would show up to the warehouse or the storefront, which is connected to the warehouse, and you'd be like, I like the sole sucks, blah, blah, blah. They would replace your shoe for you. They would take comments and, suggestions because they were trying to make a good product, right? So in terms of customizations, Vans was decades ahead of its time. As a manufacturing and because manufacturing and retail were so closely intertwined, customers could literally design their shoes themselves. If a potential buyer brought in a viable fabric, Vans would make them a unique pair of shoe overnight. So there's like so much potential customization available to you, and you had basically a direct line to the creators. So like the shoe was evolving with skateboarding needs in California at the time, which I thought was really interesting. Okay, but still, even with like these innovations, the customization, etc., Vans truly did not gain their footing until the mid-70s, when it made the decision to start producing skateboard-specific sneakers. Because even though their Vans were being used for skateboarding, they weren't designed specifically for skateboarding. There was one particular group of skaters who got hooked on these Van Doren shoes pretty early, helping to cement their place in the skate culture. The Z-Boy team, also known as the Zephyr competition team, were a group of American skateboarders in the mid-70s from Santa Monica and Venice, California. You might be familiar with the Z-Boy teams if you, grew up in the 90s, early 2000s when like skateboarding and X Games was huge and like Tony Hawk and like all this stuff. Originally consisting of 12 members, the Z-Boys were sponsored by the Jeff Ho Surfboards and Zephyr Productions Surf and Skate Shop, okay? Their innovative surfing-based style and aerial moves formed the foundations of contemporary vert and transition skateboarding. So they were like revolutionary in skateboarding. The story of the Z-Boys and the Zephyr Shop have been popularized in feature films such as Lords of Dogtown and Dogtown and Z-Boys, which
I was going to say, because I remember going to the movies to watch Lords of Dogtown with my friends.
Yes, amazing. So that group of skateboarders were obsessed with the Van Doren shoes, okay? Two members in particular were known to frequent the Van Doren Rubber Company store, Tony Alva and Stacy Peralta. They were like two of the most famous skateboarders at the time. Since they were always visiting the store, they eventually formed a rapport with the Van Doren brothers, who would often sell them singular right and left shoes if the skaters had worn through their pair unevenly while skateboarding. And according to one of the Van Doren's sons, quote, actually, the reason the first two-tone shoes came out was because Tony Alva came in one time, needed a left shoe, and didn't care about the color, so ended up wearing one in navy blue and one in red. So the first two-tone shoe we came out with was the navy blue and red. So like,
amazing.
I thought that was pretty interesting, right?
Yeah.
So Alva and Peralta even began suggesting tweaks that could be made to the existing Van style to improve their suitability for skateboarding even further. For example, adding padding to the collar of the Style 44. So like right around the heel, it used to just be like just that canvas, but now they have like a little bit of padding there to help keep it more comfortable when you're like riding, a freaking pool of some sort. Okay, so the Van Dorens worked with Alva and Peralta to develop their ideas into a brand new shoe, the Van's first official skateboarding shoe, the quote, off the wall. That's what it was called. As the story goes, Alva was skating on an empty pool and caught air while gripping his skateboard. Amazed, Z-Boy's co-founder Skip Engblom said, "Man, you just went off the wall." The off the wall phrase was quickly adopted by skaters all over. And then debuting in 1976, the off the wall, now known as the Era shoe, was and still is a beefed up rendition of the Style 44, like their original famous shoe that they launched with. Vans added a heel counter, padding around the collar, and placed the drill upper with a heavyweight cotton duck, whatever that means. The off-the-wall shoe was incredibly popular on its first release and became the shoe of choice for a whole generation of skaters, as well as birthing the now commonplace off-the-wall slogan for the Vans company. Yeah, if you know anything about Vans, Vans off the wall is like their slogan, but it's so interesting to hear like that was because
that's where it came from.
Tony Alva was like doing a trick in the 70s and someone was like, "Man, you went off the wall." Like That's really cool. So in 1977, the Off the Wall was followed up by another skateboarding shoe dubbed Style 36. It was originated from a doodle drawn by Paul Van Doren. The new style was the first Vans shoe to feature the now iconic jazz stripe on the side. You know, that like V stripe that you see on the side of Vans. It's now known as the Old School. The Style 36 was also the first Vans to utilize leather paneling to bolster the upper. In 1977, you also saw the creation of the classic Style 98, or their slip-on shoe, which was modeled with BMX riding in mind as well as skateboarding. In 1978, Vans released Style 38, now known as the Skate High. The model was the high top van, made with BMX. It was the high top that protected your ankles, and it was revolutionary. And it also featured the jazz stripe, leather paneling, and waffle sole hallmarks that you see on almost all the Vans. Very cool. So by this time, the Vans had kind of cemented itself as a huge player in the world of skateboarding. They started dabbling in other action sports like surfing, wakeboarding, motocross, snowboarding, BMX. The brand also gained exposure on the big screen in 1982 in the movie Fast Times at Ridgemont High. Sean Penn was like a huge star of the movie, and he famously donned a pair of checkerboard slip-ons throughout the whole movie.
Right. He's like the stoner kid.
Yes. In 1995, Vans became the sponsor of the Vans Warped Tour. The Warped Tour, which is now known as the Vans Warped Tour. And it's a traveling American, pop punk festival, and it like played a major part in like popularizing that style of music. Interestingly enough, there's a period of time in the 80s where the brand was doing like weird things, like expanding into a lot of different areas, and the Van Doren brothers had kind of retired. They're like, we made our money, like we're getting out of this. And the brand like overreached itself so much that they had to file for bankruptcy. Something I found interesting when Stacey Peralta was doing the Dogtown and Z-Boys film, the Vans brand was like so like not popular anymore that instead of the people in the film wearing Vans, they wore Nikes instead. So like it wasn't historically accurate in the way. Anyway, so the brand filed bankruptcy in 1984. Things weren't going well. Paul Van Doren returned to head the company because he had previously stepped down, and Vans bounced back after 3 years. And in 2004, the worldwide apparel and footwear company VF Corporation purchased Vans for $300,960 million. They still own the brand today. And then from 2008 and 2016, Vans tripled its revenue from $750 million to $2.3 billion.
Damn.
And Vans is now not only a predominant force in skate culture, but a major player in sportswear worldwide. So, like, they're going strong now. And that's Vans. That's Vans.
Cool. There's a Vans warehouse, or it's called the House of Vans in Chicago. And I've been to an event there before, and it's like a big warehouse, and there's a half pipe in there. But, I forget what I went there for. But they had, like, vendor stalls or whatever. They were selling stuff, and there was like a bar. But I wonder if that was an original like warehouse where they made Vans, and then now it's like, I don't know if it's still owned by Vans or someone else bought it, just kept the name, and like they use it as an event space.
That's so cool. Did you have a Vans in your mall?
I don't remember.
We had a Vans, and inside our mall, this is wild to me, it was a skate park in the mall. And it was called Vans, and it was the Vans skate park, and you had the actual store you could buy Vans at as well too.
That's awesome.
So like you're in the food court, and there's the Vans and the skate park, and you could see everybody skating, and you could like walk through the skate park and get to the other side of the mall, and on the other side of the skate park and the other side of the mall is where the store was. So it was like, oh, I loved it. If you're like me in high school and you're like obsessed with skater boys, you're just like hanging out at Vans all day. Right. Every Friday, you're like, oh my god, look at them skating. And
although I do have to say, I was definitely more of a Converse gal. Like, as far as shoes, I had so many Converse.
I had a pair of Converse, too.
I had them in, like, all these different colors, and I was obsessed with them. I felt like there was, like, you had to, like, pick one or the other. I did eventually get Vans, but
I had a pair of Vans. I had a pair of Converse. I had two Converse, actually. I had, like, the low top black ones, which, again, I drew on like crazy with, like, gel pens, whatever. But I also had Etnies. I was like an Etnie girl. Like the big, chunky, like fat
Right, and
sneaker.
the tongue is like huge. Yeah,
Yep.
I remember those.
Those were like my shoe of choice for a very long time. I think Etnies are coming back actually, which is so funny.
I'm surprised that they haven't, like, now with all the Y2K stuff, I'm surprised we don't see them more often.
I
no one was wearing hiking shoes at that time. So what's the deal with that? Like,
I know.
Where are these gigantic Etnies?
Like, why are New Balances in? Like the shoes my dad was wearing like 15 years ago. Why are they in, but Etnies aren't? Riddle me that.
Yeah.
I guess my dad is the true Y2K fashionista, and I'm just a nobody. Yeah. I just loved all those stories with the skaters, like the fact that like they would go in and it would only need one shoe replaced, you know, and that's how Vans started offering like their different colorways, and how like the off the wall slogan started. I'm like, that is just wild to me.
Yeah, very cool. Makes me want to get a pair of Vans.
Makes me want to rewatch Lords of Dogtown.
Yeah, I was just thinking, I'm like, I was probably like in 8th grade when I watched it. Who knows how much of it I understood? Do you ever feel that way about like movies that you saw a long time ago?
There are scenes that are like like I remember them, and I'm like thinking back, I'm like, wow, that was like something that I probably shouldn't have seen at such a young age, or I don't know, like I didn't understand really then what was going on, but I look back and I'm like, wow, that's what was happening. Although
it is interesting to think like people are so up in arms about kids seeing something like inappropriate, and it's like they don't understand what's going on.
Exactly.
Like I think of so many things I watch, I'm like, that went right over my head. Like I had 100%. No idea that that's like what it was referencing or whatever. Right. Or like in songs and stuff.
Oh, for sure. For sure.
Okay.
Okay, what do you got?
My topic comes from the Wednesday, June 14th New Yorker by Eric Akard, 29 down, New York to Santo Domingo. And the answer is Sister City.
I almost did this as a topic. I almost did this.
When you did this puzzle, like when you were saying your hits and traits, I was like, she might have done this topic.
Oh, we're lucky. We're lucky.
Right. Okay. Sister cities. I got most of my information from an article on The Guardian called A Tale of Twin Cities, How Coventry and Stalingrad Invented the Concept by Trevor Baker. So sister cities is also known as twin towns. I feel like in Europe, it's twin towns is more common, or like in the UK.
Okay.
But it's sister cities in the US. It's an agreement and a partnership between two towns, cities, provinces, regions, sometimes even countries that are like across the globe from each other. Not, directly across, but
so it's an official agreement.
Yes, some are legally binding, others are like symbolic and social, but like now there is an official organization that you would like sign up to become a sister city with someone.
I am so glad you're doing this topic because I was like, that sounds so interesting. I wonder if it's just like, oh, we're similar because we are on the same longitude or whatever. Like I was like, what makes something a sister city? So I'm ready to learn. Please, my lord.
So the whole point of having a sister city is to have a relationship that fosters cultural understanding, friendship, exchange, also sometimes more practical things like trade agreements and business partnerships.
Cool.
So how did it all start? The earliest known sister cities were Paderborn, Germany, and Le Mans, France, that came together way back in 836. Do you like my French pronunciation there?
I loved it.
Can you tell I went to Paris?
She went to Paris.
Okay. I couldn't, this was like on all the sites, like the first sister cities, but there wasn't too much information on it. So I did some digging and this is what I got. It seems like it was religiously motivated. So basically, Liberius of Le Mans was the second bishop of Le Mans, France, and he was the bishop for 50 years. He died in 397, and some relics of his body were placed into an altar in the cathedral, which is a thing that Catholics like to do.
They do. They love that.
He became the saint of good death since he died in the arms of his friend. So,
okay.
But hundreds of years later, in 835, Emperor Louis the Pious instructed the current bishop of Le Mans, France, to send some of Liberius's remains to Paderborn, Germany, since they had no saint of their own. So, Liberius of Le Mans became the patron saint of Paderborn, Germany. So...
All right.
Right?
All he had to do was die in his friend's arms.
Right. In France. And then he gets sent to Germany.
Yeah.
And he's their patron saint. But that led to a long-lasting friendship between the two cities that still exists until this day. You know, some of the stuff I read is like they prayed for each other. It was like, you know, more religiously motivated. But there was a connection between two seemingly random cities, and it still exists today. So they say.
Like, yeah, like why was he like so worked up about Paderborn or whatever not having a patron saint? You know, like why that specific place, you know? And like,
who knows what people were worried about
to be
at that
a
time.
fly on the wall.
Right. Okay. In 1905, Toledo, Ohio, the first U.S. city to basically have a sister city before they became official, began a relationship with Toledo, Spain, based solely on the fact that they shared the same name.
Cute.
So that was like the first sister city in the U.S. But the official sister city organization that we know today didn't start until after World War II. So the first post-war, basically after World War II, there was like this push for sister cities to kind of like rebuild, you know, relationships and foster understanding between different countries because, you know, the whole world was at war for the second time.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So the first post-war socially driven legal link between two places was Conventry, England, and Stalingrad, now Volgograd in Russia.
Interesting.
So the citizens of Conventry, mainly women, they came together to raise money for the Red Army, singling out Stalingrad as the focus of their campaign. But why Stalingrad?
Why?
Well, the cities were a similar size, they both manufactured tractors, and they both had virtually been wiped off the map by bombing. So there was like a huge left-wing movement in Coventry at the time, and they felt a kinship to Stalingrad because they were like, that city's a lot like us, let's help them.
Cool.
The efforts were by the people, so it was small. On one occasion, 830 people paid 6 pence each to sign a tablecloth, which was sent to Stalingrad with the message, "Little help is better than big sympathy." Despite being involved in Britain's own struggle for survival, the people of Coventry raised £4,000 for mobile X-ray units for the Red Army, which would be the equivalent to £203,000 today.
Wow.
So they raised a lot of money. And there were stories of like children who were, you know, kids at the time that were like, yeah, we would have like sales, like not bake sales, but like, you know, food sales, like selling onions and stuff. And for Stalingrad, like that was a common thing that would be happening there. In response, 36,000 women in Stalingrad signed an album that was sent to Coventry. Then in 1944, an official bond of friendship was created between the two cities. At that time, only an estimated 9,000 citizens survived in Stalingrad's rubble. So Stalingrad had really been through it, but they, you know, had an official bond of friendship. Coventry's town clerk was quoted as saying he hoped the bond would lead to, quote, mutual exchange of visits, the establishment of pen friendships, and the exchange of literature and information.
Cute.
And this bond even lasted throughout the Cold War. In 1989, when Leonid Brezhnev was boosting Soviet military spending and Margaret Thatcher was in the UK steering it more right, a Coventry mayor went out to Volgograd, or Stalingrad, Volgograd, and planted a tree in Memorial Park.
Wow.
Most people felt that the point of twitting was to create relationships in order to make it harder to create the hate and division necessary for war. Because some people were like, you know, tensions between UK and Russia were horrible at this time. So why were you trying to have this relationship like between these two cities? And they were like, it's more about like creating connections between people, not about the government or, you know.
Yeah, like when you think about like, oh, we're at war with like, you know, so and so, like you're thinking about major political powers fighting against each other.
Right.
Like the common people, most common people in either country in any given place that there's war does not want there to be war, and in fact would prefer peace. Do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
So it makes sense that these common people were trying to like forge bonds and community as a way to, I don't know, potentially just survive.
Yeah. Especially at that time, it's not like, you know, it's obviously before the internet and stuff like that. So, you know, and people didn't travel as much, especially if you're like during this time, if you're from like a smaller town, you don't have the money to travel. So to have these like exchanges where the like town brings people over, then you get to meet like Russian people, otherwise that you wouldn't have met.
Yep.
But did this actually work? I'm going to go back to talking about Coventry and Stalingrad at the end, but
okay.
For now, I'm going to talk about like this kind of started this trend of other cities doing the same thing after the war. So basically they wanted to foster understanding and friendship among former enemies as an act of peace and reconciliation. So Coventry even got some new twin cities. Like they weren't, they were
polyamorous. Yes, what you're saying.
Like some of their twin cities were Kiel and Dresden, in Germany. Mm-hmm. But they were happening all over the world. And in 1956, Dwight D. Eisenhower proposed a people-to-people citizen diplomacy initiative, which led to the creation of Sister Cities International, which is a nonprofit citizen diplomacy network that facilitates that facilitates sister cities between the U.S. and other countries. So that's the official one in the U.S. Other countries have their own ones, but in the U.S. it was created by Dwight D. Eisenhower, and it's called Sister Cities International. They have a website, so if you live in the U.S. and you're wondering if your city has a sister city, you can look it up there.
You better tell us about Chicago.
I'll tell you, I don't have that much except our sister city. We have a lot, but I think one of them is definitely Warsaw, Poland.
Okay, I'll take it. Well, we have a lot of Polish people, so it makes sense.
And that's why, and I'll get into like how different countries pick different sister cities. But in the Sister Cities International, there's a total of 1,800 cities, states, and counties in the U.S. are partnered with 138 countries worldwide. So U.S. cities would partner up for various reasons. Generally, partner towns have similar demographics and size. They may arise from business connections, travel, similar industries, diaspora communities, or shared history. For example, there's a partnership between Portland, Oregon, and Bologna, Italy.
Bologna,
Italy. Anyways, that arose from shared industries in biotech and education and, quote, a similar attitude towards food. That's like,
and I love a bologna. I love a bologna.
It's true, though. I mean, Portland is like a huge food city.
That's
Portland,
right.
Oregon.
You're right.
Okay, Chicago's link with Warsaw, Poland began with Chicago's historic Polish community. Indianapolis, Indiana, and Monza, Italy are sister cities because they both have a long association with auto racing. So like the Indy 500, and then there's also a big race in Monza, Italy.
Got it.
So an example of, because like Alex was asking me, like, how does this nonprofit make money? Well, they, like the Sister Cities nonprofit, they do events and stuff. So an example of a twin town cultural event is the annual National Cherry Blossom Festival in Washington, D.C., because that honors Washington's twin relationship with Tokyo City. So yes, the cherry blossoms were a gift from Tokyo in 1912 before they officially became sister cities, but they had a relationship. And so now like that festival is put on by this organization. Another interesting fun fact, Ben and Jerry's ice cream company was founded in Vermont, and Vermont has a sister region, the Republic of Karelia in Russia, and Ben and Jerry's opened a store in Republic of Karelia, and they offer the same profit sharing plan to its Russian employees.
That is amazing.
Isn't that cool?
That's amazing.
In April 2017, sister cities Fort Worth, Texas, and Toluca, Mexico came together to celebrate women in a 3-day conference called Women Engine of Change.
Okay.
Seattle, they have a sister city in Bergen, Norway, and they hold one of the largest Norwegian celebrations outside of Norway. It's called sorry, my pronunciation, Syttende Mai. But
amazing.
Takes place in Seattle because,
Cool.
Is their sister city, although I wonder if there's also a lot of Norwegians in Seattle. Could be. Okay, some other fun facts about sister cities. While a lot of cities have multiple sisters, Rome and Paris are exclusive only to each other. They are official sister cities, and the phrase, only Paris is good enough for Rome and only Rome is good enough for Paris, was coined as their twinning agreement was signed.
Are you kidding? I'm obsessed.
Right.
The romance in the air?
I know.
The passion?
They have some unofficial partnerships, is what the website said, but on the side. But
they have some side pieces? Okay.
Yeah.
Got it.
On the other hand, St. Petersburg, Russia might have the most sister cities with 55 official partner cities, probably due to Russia having a turbulent past. People want to link up with Russia. But the article I got this from was written before the current war. So I don't know how many partnerships have fizzled out, there are a lot of, like, one of the big issues people have with sister cities is, like, sometimes people want to stop being sister cities with a country that has, you know, like, human rights issues, or, like, they don't agree, like, maybe, you know, gay marriage is illegal or something, and they're like, why are we partnered with a city that promotes homophobia? But
right.
like I said, you know, you can't judge people who live someplace by the actions of their government, because God knows what we would be judged for, like, in the US.
Yeah.
Okay, the furthest sister cities is probably Dunedin in New Zealand and Edinburgh in Scotland. And what's the connection between these two?
What's the connection?
Well, it's actually closer than you might think. So Dunedin is the Scottish Gaelic term for Edinburgh. The town was settled by Scots in 1848 during a search for gold. So
cute.
They're very related.
Yeah.
Okay, so twinning, is it worth it? What about twinning with a city you don't agree with? Well, like I said, twinning is about citizens and people, not politicians. But in 2009, one of Britain's most gloriously un-PC super mayors, Peter Davies, that's from the article, said, quote, "The idea that cultural links have been lost is nonsensical. Only about a dozen people ever benefited from these trips. I can see that it arose out of altruistic motives after the war, but it just became about junkets." So he cut off his town's ties with 5 sister cities, but he said it only saved him £4,000 a year, which doesn't seem like that much to me. Okay, but let's go back to where it all started, Coventry and Stalingrad now, Volgograd. So in 2014, when tensions with Russia were the highest they'd been since the Cold War, again, this was written before this current war, Volgograd's children's orchestra visited Coventry and performed a piece of music called the Twin Song. A line in the song says, quote, "It's better to be twins than to be cold to each other." Cute. Orchestra leader Yuri Ilyanov said, "I was a little bit worried about hearing some questions from people about politics, but luckily there was nothing like that. We only heard nice things about the orchestra." Derek Nisbet was the local Coventry composer who made the Twin Song, and he also, like, helped, you know, make this whole trip happen. He said this about twin cities between, like, tumultuous countries. Quote, "Let's find new twins that are more challenging. When we were growing up, we thought of Russia as this mysterious anonymous threat. I didn't know any Russians, but the kids here who've met Russians and seen that they're the same as them have overcome that." Carol Brown is a Coventry cultural planner, shares his sentiment, saying, quote, "We don't understand Russia at all. Over 20 million people died there in the Second World War, but people aren't aware of the suffering. It makes me angry when people make assumptions about things they've read in the papers when they don't know any of the history." So I'll end.
I feel that way about, I mean, countries at war with each other, like, most of the people are just people, just like you and I are just people. Like,
right. You don't choose what, like, country you are born into.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
I'll end with a quote from The Guardian. Quote, "The continuing cultural exchanges between the Coventry and Volgograd are a symbol that, whatever's going on at a political level, ordinary people can still communicate, help, and inspire each other, just as they did in 1944.
Amazing.
So, there you go.
I guess that means we need to spread love to Warsaw.
Yeah, that's our
Poland.
sister city. We
show up at the Warsaw airport and we're like, "We're here from Chicago," and they, like, lay out the red carpet for us.
Right. And there were some other things that were interesting, like, you know, some people are like, well, sister cities don't work because, like, this town in England had a sister city in China, and that basically allowed them to create this, like, Chinese owned taxi empire in this city, because, like, you know, sometimes it does foster, like, business relationships, or a lot of it's to, like, promote like travel, you know, tourism between the two cities. But I feel like I don't think it hurts anyone.
Well, and also, you know, with that specific example you use, it's like the taxi industry is only able to boom if people are using the taxis, which means people needed the taxis. It's like, the logic isn't logicking here. Right.
That example, I'm like, okay, that's fine. That's how, like, the world works. But I mean, as far as people saying, like, well, how can you be twin cities with a, you know, city that you don't agree with, whatever that means? Because people could say the same thing about, you know, us in the US.
100%.
But I do feel like it doesn't hurt anyone. Like, I don't know how much, sure, maybe in some cases, like, it doesn't actually do that much. I think maybe, you know, depending on the city, like, smaller cities or at a time when people weren't able to travel as much, it would, like, I feel like it would be cooler in less metropolitan cities, like, you know, like Joliet, Illinois, if they had a sister city, like in some random small town in Europe and did have like exchanges and, you know, programs where like kids could go to the other country and those kids could come 100%. Here. Like, I feel like that would be very,
well, then the question is like this, like,
culturally beneficial.
What do these even do? What do these even do? Like, what does do mean to these people? Like, what do they need to do is the question. Like, what they need to do is have an open line of communication with a culture and a place that's different from them, which seems like that is what they are doing. I think, like, especially...
Like, it doesn't make any money, so what's the point of doing it?
Like, especially in the U.S., like, there are like, everything has to have, like, a monetary value. Everything has to, like, be beneficial, quote unquote, to you in some way. And by beneficial, I mean, like, raising your status, raising your wealth, raising, like, all of these things. And it's like, well, what if it's just making you new friends? What if it's opening your worldview? What if it's allowing you to have a conversation that you would literally never have had in your life before, you know?
Yeah.
So to those people that are like fucking Debbie Downers, like, well, it doesn't make us any money, actually. It costs us £4,000 in the last 15 years to send letters to these people. Let's cut it. It's like, you're just removing people's joy. Like, what it does is bring joy, right? Like, anyway.
Yeah, it's very interesting.
It is. Like, I want a pen pal now. Not that that's related to sister cities, but it kind of is.
Easily find one. I know it is kind of interesting to think about, like, finding someone. Well, let's look on Chicago's, like, sister city thing. See who our sisters are.
Oh, now that we're learning these languages, maybe we should find a pen pal that speaks that language.
True. Yeah, maybe.
That could be fun, actually. I'd be really nervous the whole time.
I'd be like, I could just talk to my mom.
Right. Your mom is your pen pal. Yeah.
Yeah, right? I should start texting her in Spanish and she'll be like,
Yeah.
Well, that's that, everyone.
Wow. Good topics today.
Another great episode under our belt. Thanks for listening, everyone. If you enjoyed it, you can find us on Twitter at The Good Eve Girls.
Or Instagram at The Good Evening Girls.
Or TikTok at The Good Eve Girls.
And we'll be here again another time soon. And until then, as always, keep curious, my fine feathered friends. We'll see you next time. Bye.